This week on Buffering, we are joined by Steve Mammone, president of getfused, a Boston-based creative agency. Welcome, Steve. Steve, we are really excited to get into the main topic today around e-commerce. And this is something that Zack and I have talked quite a bit about in the past and we're really passionate about. But first, can you give us a little bit more detail on yourself and the agency you run, and also maybe a little bit more about your background, as I feel like it's a bit unique in the space?
Sure. Where to start? So I've been doing this for 29 years, right? Thank you again for inviting me. We are a creative marketing agency, as you mentioned. Right behind me is Boston Seaport, right here in South Boston. And it was founded 29 years ago. We were started off as a design development shop right around the dot-com boom before it busted. And we are still here. So we must have been doing something right through all of that. But we were able to get pretty good at helping folks sell online, very things we were bringing to e-commerce. And that's really when we decided, you know what, we could probably help with the brand marketing aspects as well. So by 2006, we had transformed into that brand marketing agency first and foremost, but we still have a lot of technical capability in the background. So when you do think of us, I like to tell folks the easiest way to think of us are these three pillars. There's brand, marketing, and web. And they build solutions. So the standard solutions, creative and design, marketing, advertising, customer experience, these are all the things that you would expect those three pillars when you combine certain elements of each into being able to provide. But that is the thing. We provide custom solutions to a wide range of companies across an even wider range of industries. So the one thing I like to tell new clients is we don't suffer from cognitive lock. It's not like we go around dealing with one particular industry and we know exactly what you need before we even listen to you. We really get to learn a lot, and we get to bring a lot with us.
Well, you mentioned creative a couple of times there, Steve. And one of the things I was curious about, just before we get into the rest of actual meat of the conversation, but one of the things that I think is really interesting about you is you do have a band, like a legit band, is put out albums and those sorts of things. I listened to the latest one that you guys put out, I think earlier this year. I'd love to hear a little bit about. I'm just curious about like influences, what you're listening to lately. What's the kind of music that inspires you? I love music. I listen to music every single day, all day when I'm not on calls and things like that. So I'm always curious what people are into.
Your research team has done a very good job if you know all that about me. I've been in music forever. I actually went to Berkeley before I got into what I'm into now. And I think it really starts late 80s, early 90s is when I kind of awoke to college alternatives. So a lot of replacements, REM. But then in the 90s, it really went the direction of Sonic Youth, Nirvana, Dinosaur Jr., Pavement, Sebadoh, Cat Power, PJ Harvey. And today, I still love listening to new bands. And the ones I tend to gravitate to are the newer bands that actually do have a nod to guitar-heavy music. I play guitar. I like guitar. So bands like Courtney Barnett, I think she's wonderful, or Snail Mail.
Oh, I love Courtney Barnett.
Yeah. So they're a couple that I absolutely love. And I just feel like they were misplaced. They could have come out in the 90s and fit in just fine with the rest of us. But yeah, now I do it more as a hobby, a creative outlet for myself.
No, that's awesome. I love Courtney Barnett. I feel like she could have been placed in any era, to be honest with you. One of my favorite songs of hers. She's such a great songwriter, but I don't know if you know the song Depreston. It's such a great tune. I love that song so much. It's such a perfect encapsulation of what it means to be an adult in kind of a depressing way. But I love that song so much. I could listen to that one forever.
Well, we talked a little bit there. I wasn't being silent, but yeah, you might have lost me there. I was hoping we'd be talking about Beach House, but we also have a Calyx band. So Steve, we may have to have you join them one of these days too.
This is true.
Well,
We do
did
have
they
a Calyx
perform at
band, Steve.
Connections?
They
They
did
did,
actually.
yeah.
Yes.
Well, that would be
Yeah,
wonderful.
they performed at Connections. They've performed at our field kickoff, sales kickoff events in the past. We have some legit musicians in there as well that have, done some cool things before they decided to, become to make their way into the tech industry. But I think the thing you said there, the creative outlet and just having an outlet to do something different is so important. And whether that's music or sports or whatever, right? But that's awesome. I appreciate you sharing a little bit of that background.
Yeah, my Instagram profile, if you read it, the background says a career in rock didn't pan out. Plan B is in effect. So this is basically Plan B, starting my own marketing agency.
Oh, that's awesome. I love it.
Well, if you're looking to put together a band to go on tour, Gabe and I are sadly not the right people to have that discussion with.
No.
But Steve, talking about doing things a little bit differently, I want to talk about more about your marketing background and really how you got into marketing. Gabe and I have a lot of different conversations with marketers every day, and in our industry, how people get into marketing is quite unique or quite different. But I'd love to hear about you and your journey into marketing, and ultimately what pushed you into founding getfused.
Yeah, so it does dovetail into that creative impulse or the music. As I mentioned, I had gone to Berkeley, and one thing I learned in the first semester is throw a brick in Boston and you're going to hit a guitarist. So I realized I really wasn't doing anything too far off from what everyone else out there was doing. And I probably didn't need to go to school for it. So, what does every aspiring musician decide to do when they've determined maybe I don't want to go to school for music? I went to engineering school and I became a geotechnical engineer. So you could see I've had this, and my team hates when I use this right brain, left brain. I'm very analytical, but I love to be very creative too. And I became a geotechnical engineer. I engineered soils and spent my first 10 years in it. But still, having performed music and loving music, we had to create gig posters and send out flyers and create album cover artwork. And it really started at that point that I decided, oh, I don't need to just cut tape, Xerox cut tape, zero. I can get a computer and do this stuff. I mean, we're talking, this is how long ago it was. And I got my first computer and really started enjoying the creative aspect. And then we decided, oh, well, the band needs a website. And I learned how to code in HTML and got really proficient in Photoshop and designing. And it became a side hustle at that point. We're talking early 90s, that by 96, it was no longer a side hustle. It was something that we were doing head on and doing it for clients and doing it well. Literally by 2001, just by happenstance, we ended up doing commerce, which we're going to talk about, for of all brands, the New England Patriots.
Wow.
They were in a desperate situation. They had won the AFC championship and their e-commerce platform tanked. And here's four of us who at the time were working in this little known code called Cold Fusion, which was actually born across the river here in Cambridge. And that's what that platform was in. And for 2 weeks, their vendor couldn't get it running just before the Super Bowl. And my business partner, Spencer Collier, within 20 minutes got it running. We got it to limp through the Super Bowl. And they said, you build us our commerce system. And we did. And we took them through all their remaining Super Bowls, even built their CMS platform until the league consolidated all those years ago. So it was that path of being creative and analytical that brought me into marketing. As I said, we got really good at commerce and helping people sell the things we brought online, that it was just natural. Oh, can you do search engine optimization? Can you do this? Can you do? And before you knew it, we were doing more of the marketing as well as the brand storytelling, if you want to look at it that way. It just became more of an evolution. And I really like it because it combines the path I took, the company took the same evolution, taking a creative passion with this technical rigor and then transforming into something where you could do both. Well, getfused kind of started like that too, very technical, very much in the e-commerce, but got really good at the marketing aspect. And I think that's what separates us a little bit from some of the other marketing agencies, is that we really do have this strong technical underpinning. At one point, we had 13 developers on the team. Now we have one, because we just don't need developers like we used to. We're not developing e-commerce platforms. We're not developing our own content management system. There are a lot of good ones out there to pick from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so many good tools that you could leverage there. I do think that's to just talk about that bit for a moment around, Zach and I have chatted about this before on previous episodes, and how people come to marketing as a career. And I came to it from a atypical path as well. My career started out in accounting and finance. And so I have that very data analytical brain as well, and ended up making my way into marketing and now sales. But there's so many paths to be successful in a marketing or sales role. And certainly the creative part is, I think, what people get excited about and what maybe draws them in. But I don't know. I mean, Zach, you and I have chatted about this before too, right? Like, you were doing this math when you were in college of, do I want to do a minor in, or, my major in finance, or do I want to do my major in marketing? And I know that was you kind of split that analytical versus
What
creative side as well.
Yeah, Steve, as you were talking about that, I could just, picture myself. I was waiting for Gabe to say something with the creative and the analytical side, because I do it in college more so. I was more focused on the data. And then my senior year, I had an internship where I was doing more graphic design, things like that. And I kind of pushed more into the creative angle. And during the pandemic, even up to today, even very strong on the creative side. But I started out in the data, the accounting, the finance part of business, and here we are today. So I think that's a fantastic path. Gabe, same for you. I know Gabe loves to critique websites and find new marketing opportunities as well, but strong finance background. So again, analytical and creative there too.
It's just cool to be able to bring those things together. And I think it's cool to be able to have multiple paths for people in a marketing career. Steve, as you mentioned, you had all these developers and technical folks on the team. That's an important part of everything that we're doing here as well, especially as it relates to e-commerce, which I know we're going to get into, which actually maybe that's a nice transition to this. So that is really the main topic, Steve, that we wanted to get into with you today, was e-com. And it's something, again, Zach and I have spoken about in past episodes, and we love having an expert to really dig in deeper on this topic. We were at our Connections event a couple weeks ago, and somebody on the main stage threw out a number of 24% of broadband service providers have the ability to take orders online. I leaned over to a colleague who was sitting next to me and said, I think they might have missed a decimal point, because I'll be honest, I feel like it's maybe closer to 2.4%, not 24%. There's a lot of opportunity for broadband service providers to incorporate e-commerce and incorporate a proper selling strategy through their websites, into this industry. I think it's one of the kind of great ironies is that internet providers who are selling the internet don't let you buy internet on the internet. Not to say internet like 50 times there, but
And Gabe, to that, a contact us form is not e-commerce.
yes, exactly. A form, yeah, well, that may be a start of at least something. And I know we're going to talk about that too, kind of what an MVP would look like. But Steve, just to bring this back, I'd love to hear, can you talk to us just a little bit about the importance of e-com and why not having the ability to take orders online is frankly costing these companies massive amounts of revenue?
Yeah, absolutely. The first question I have is back at you with the 24%. Was that including nationwide carriers, BSPs, or was that Palex BSPs?
I don't know. It's a great question. I think it was intended to be more of the broadband service providers that we generally work with. The larger, your very large cable companies obviously have the ability to take orders online. And there are a lot of other customers who do, or other companies who do also, but it's still fairly nascent, to be honest. I mean, Zach and I spend a lot of time looking at these websites, and there are many, many times where We go to a website and the only call to action is, here is our phone number, please pick up the phone and call us. And
Call us.
that's a tough way to make a living.
Yeah, yeah, it is. And I could certainly answer that question, but just to give some industry averages, because I do work, as I mentioned, with a lot of insurance companies, banking companies, and they're at around 50%. Insurance has been there for quite a while, 50 plus percent, with, of course, the ability to get an auto policy online probably being one of the easiest things anyone can do. But, I've got experience with specialty lines of insurance and bringing it online, which we'll talk to in a bit. And then banking, um, you're right. Filling out a form isn't commerce, but neither is checking out and whipping out a credit card. So I consider online account opening just as good as e-commerce. A checking account is, you know, the gold standard. If you can get someone to open up a checking account at your bank, they're probably going to be there a while rather than just parking hot money in a CD. So that is a real conversion goal for them. And that's at 50%. However, that exploded in the last 2 years. That was down in the 20s 2 years ago. So
Interesting.
what does that tell me about BSPs? It may not be a competitive necessity today, but if it goes the way of banking and community banks now offering it, everywhere, it is going to be something that is a necessity. So when you look at e-commerce, there are several different things that I look at and reasons why you would want to do it. So the first one is, just a frictionless customer experience, right? And I know Calex really focuses on customer experience. And in this day and age, customers expect to start their service journey instantly. Oh, I like it. I think I want it. The impulse is strict. I want to get it. And they don't want to deal with phone calls or forms. Commerce is 24/7, and if people prefer a phone call, that's fine. But at least commerce being 24/7, even in the off hours, people can purchase and increases the opportunity for you to sell more and decreases the barriers to convert. So, of course, the user experience, the customer experience is key. There's also, though, when you look beyond it, the operational efficiency, where now your site is helping share the burden and load of your sales team. It's actually capable of selling as well. So a smaller staff maybe can now handle more output because you've got
Hmm.
this full-time salesperson that never goes to sleep, the website.
That's such an important point. There is the cost, and from my perspective, that's a huge reason to go back to the finance and accounting part of my brain. It's the most cost-effective way for us to drive conversions. If you're having to, pay somebody to go door to door to drive sales, that can be a very effective way to drive conversions. But my goodness, that is expensive. Or even, to your point, being in a call center, and having to pay a salary to do, to somebody to do that. That again is a very expensive tactic for taking orders.
It is. Yep. And, the other thing you can do with it is basically direct attribution, right? You're bolting a cash register onto the website now. So when you are trying to figure out, well, what is the cost of running this? What's the cost of my advertising? Well, now you can make a direct attribution between your inbound marketing efforts and who came out the other side of that funnel having purchased someone, where without it, it's the marketing team meeting with the sales team once a month, trying to go through, well, here's all the qualified leads we gave you. Did any of them pop up as sales in the month? And you're trying to figure out, was it that passive billboard that got us the sales, or was it, the keywords that we've been paying for in Google? It becomes a lot clearer. And you can
Hmm.
do some really sophisticated marketing at that point, with the understanding that there's this direct attribution. I know whether or not this is profitable, whether or not I want to continue it. I like to tell clients, it becomes this little machine where you put $1 in and you want to see $2 come out. And if it's worth funding more inbound efforts, again, because the cash register is tied right to the site. So that's one. The other one is just the competitive parity, right? I mean, you mentioned it. It's essential with the larger providers who are already offering this service. So, if you want to be taking seriously at that level, you at least have to offer some of these things. And that's literally why community banks, have adopted it the way they have. It is just everything is going. I remember years ago when mobile banking was a very difficult reach for them. And now it's just common. It's common, it's accepted, and you're going to see that. As companies looking for longevity need to do the things that everyone else is doing or meeting the expectations. And that brings me to the most important thing. And Zach, probably the one you'll agree with the most. You got to meet the expectations of a younger audience. So, as I said, much of this is becoming an expectation. And if you want to have longevity in business, these are your future customers and current customers, I might add. So, I would tell BSPs, you know, look at your Calex engagement cloud, look at your data, because I think what you're going to find is there's a lot of young customers out there looking for these services, and the things that they care about are not what the older customer may care about. And I think it was Roger Lewis. You had him on an older podcast, Fearless Launch, and he talked about that very thing where BSPs didn't recognize the younger audience. And I think really commerce is meeting an expectation of a younger audience.
Gabe, we talk about that quite a bit. And at Connections, in one of my presentations, I mentioned that as marketers, there's never been a time where we have as much rich and insightful data as we do today. And taking that a step further, we always hear people say, "Oh, my audience is old. They don't want this kind of stuff," right? And then once you look at the data, it's a completely different story. And like I said, we have the ability to make that hyper personalized marketing or that hyper personalized experience today, and we have to take advantage of that.
Well, and to your point, Steve, that's the expectation with a younger group. I always say if Zach has to pick up the phone and call somebody, that means that something has gone terribly wrong, and he's
That's a
upset.
lost customer.
Yeah, exactly. He's not going to be happy in that situation.
So, just shifting here a little bit, Gabe and I love to talk about testing, split testing on the podcast, but I want to talk a little bit about some of the struggles we see with BSPs struggling to make that first step. And we often see people get kind of wound up and they want to have this full end-to-end solution before launching anything, which isn't often, if ever, successful. But Steve, can you talk to us a little bit about how you think a company could use an MVP approach to launching something like e-commerce?
Yeah, absolutely. So MVP, minimum viable product. And that's a great question to follow up on, because if we didn't scare everyone listening into, oh my God, we need to be in commerce and we don't know the first thing about it. Now I'm here to tell you, well, don't worry. You don't have to jump headlong into the deep end of the pool. We don't need things that connect to everything else. Matter of fact, I prefer you don't, because I have a very simple mantra that I often relay to any company going through a digital transformation of any type. Let the need precipitate the change. If you try to crystal ball all the features or all the requirements you think you need day one and will not launch until you have them day one, chances are good you're never going to get there. Or you're going to get there with something that maybe does 50% of what you actually needed it to, and 50% of things you will never need it to. So I really do like these minimum viable products, or these swings or bites at the apple, whatever you want to call it. It probably goes back to my agile methodology of development. That's what we did as developers. You just tried to carve off the components and continually iterate upon it. That's why on your mobile app, you're always getting updates on your mobile phone, because they'd rather iterate on a monthly process rather than try to do these big updates, every few years. So, having said that, I really do tell all my clients with e-commerce, you don't have to start with all this connectivity in the back end. So just look at your current process. And as you mentioned, if it is a phone call, who's on the other end of the phone and what are they doing? They're probably keying something into a system. because they are taking this information over the phone. Well, instead of having that person take it over the phone, maybe the website could take it over the internet. And then, no one has to look behind the curtain day one, but maybe that information comes in and then it is manually or through an import and an export programmatically, but not in real time. It is put into that very system. That's a good way of starting. And when you look at it from that perspective, it doesn't have to be just starting a service too. Could be paying a bill online, which could be, a great feature that you just don't offer right now. My local water company, up until last year, they had a drive up window where people could pay their bills by driving up. And, now you can pay online and it's a big to do for them. But honestly, we've been paying bills online for years now. So
Mhm.
there are small things you can look at. The other thing is that I like to say is you could even start with a smart form. So to your point, forms aren't commerce, but with something like, WordPress, which most of these sites are on, you could get Gravity forms. You don't need to go straight into a commerce platform per se. If you want to create an experience where you ask some qualifying questions, where do you live? Do we have service in that area? Takes them to the next page, but you ask a few more things and then it gets them to the point of putting in some information, payment details. You can do that in Gravity forms and you can do it securely. And one of the ways to do that is use a payment gateway. And that might be a new term for some folks trying to get into commerce right now. But a payment gateway, one of the more common ones, authorize.net. But if you looked at your organization, you may already have a payment gateway, or your payment processor may have their own payment gateway that you could then incorporate into your website. So it
That's a good point.
again is not something where you are even in the realm of having to transmit, store, or keep otherwise highly sensitive personal information. And that is one of the bigger concerns, not just the cost, but the security implications of doing commerce.
Mhm.
And the way you're able to do it now with these tools and these third party services, it can be seamless because Authorize is embedded in. You are literally they're on your website, but they're keying it in directly to Authorize. You are never holding it, transmitting it, or seeing it. You just get a transaction ID back, and you're able to then charge that card either right away or in the future when the service is delivered, however you'd want to go about it. So there are definitely ways to do this. And again, I'll point to one of your older episodes. You had Laurie from Cable Links on, and they were proud that they had just gotten their order online
Mhm.
functioning. And they use Ecweb, and Ecweb has about 500,000 sites running across the US. They are just a commercially available platform that is simple to deploy and get into commerce. Shopify is another one. WooCommerce is another one. There are so many of them out there. But I'm going to back it up even a little bit to talk about how you approach your site for commerce, how it's going to help you in a whole host of other areas. So even if you're not thinking you're interested in commerce right now, you're still going to need a good foundation. And that's one thing I've noticed, certainly with some of the banking customers I've had, of the insurance customers. And I'm sure if I went to the BSP sites, I would see it, because I think, matter of fact, one of your episodes, you talked about it, where, you know, laying out your products in a way that folks can actually self-identify what works for them, understand what's meaningful to show them. There's a lot more you can do with how you're presenting your offerings. And commerce, e-commerce isn't going to be a crutch for bad messaging, or you have to get your offers down in order to even get them to consider that next step. So maybe you're not ready for commerce, maybe you're a little bit scared. Well, there's something in it for you too, to be thinking along those, ideas. So are your plans clearly defined and named? you know um do you have the right calls to action or calls to outcome that guide users to that next step, even if it is a phone call or an inquiry form. Nothing worse than just getting led to a form, throwing something into the abyss and not knowing what's next. Are you
Yeah,
even
totally.
letting them know this is what's going to happen? This is what you can expect next. And maybe there's a notification email that comes in with additional messaging to let you know what's going on. Those are all the things you should be doing, even if you're not in commerce. What's essential to each target customer, understanding those target customers, again, going back to looking at your data and making sure that what you have on the offering is meaningful and not just additional information that no one really cares about. And I bring it back again to insurance companies where folks are buying an auto policy. You don't need to explain to them in a page of text what an auto policy is. They know what the auto policy is. They need to know what the difference is between your policy, the others, what that experience is going to be like, and how happy they're going to feel about having chosen you to do business with. And that's brand messaging, right? You're going to make them the hero. You're not the hero. Hey, we're great. We're the best BSPs in the area. No, you want to talk to them about how wonderful their life's going to be because they took the time to choose you and how easy this is going to
Yeah.
be for them, right? So there is just so much you can do foundationally with your current website before you even think about hooking commerce into it. So I didn't want to lose that fact. Commerce is not a crutch. It's not going to fix that stuff.
No, it's a great point, and I think we are both in violent agreement with you there that, just because you've set things up to take orders in an easy way, if the if the front end of that doesn't make sense to the consumer, well, then your conversion rates are going to suffer significantly. And I think what you said there around the MVP piece is really important too, because it may be a situation where you've got to prove to others in the organization that this is something that's going to be successful. We mentioned not being able to take orders after hours and things like that. Well, how much revenue am I actually losing? If you stand up an MVP program like what you're talking about, Steve, then you can actually point to some hard facts and figures. Hey, we got 150 orders over the last month that we wouldn't have gotten otherwise, and that generates this much revenue. And then you can start to have some of the conversations with leadership to say, this is why we need to make those investments. The other
And then
bit you said there around, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, and the need brings about the change while you're in that MVP. So if ever the day comes
Mm-hmm.
where, oh, we're getting so many orders on this thing that this import that we're doing or this manual keying is just getting ridiculous. Well, now it makes sense to
Good
invest
problem
in
to have,
bridging that
though.
gap. Right. It's a great
Yeah, but
problem
it's
to
like,
have,
oh
but
man, I'm getting crushed by orders.
right. But you may also learn something in that MVP about the way people want to buy or what they're looking to
For sure.
do. And you can optimize and A B test the way you're putting these offerings out there, what you're asking of people to get them as frictionlessly through the process as you can. It's all much easier to do when you know that what you have is good for today. It's not what you plan on having tomorrow. And you are committed to iterating off of it based on how it performs. You
Mhm.
start building these big hulking systems in big ERP platforms. Yeah, every little move costs a lot of money, but when you're doing it this way, it's much easier to just build as the need would dictate.
Totally makes sense. You've mentioned a couple of times banks and insurance, and that was something I wanted to touch on briefly as well. You're working with a lot of different types of companies outside of the broadband space. You had actually shared some examples with us of regional banks that frankly are not doing a great job of explaining the services that they're selling to their customers, to be blunt. And it reminded me a lot of what we see in the BSP space. Very fact-based. With the banks, it was around insurance rates and, what minimum thresholds do you need to have? And I sort of was correlating that back to, speed profiles and, latency rates and things like that. And then the other piece that I think is very similar in the banking space is there's these big buttons for like disclosures, right? Regulatory disclosures. And it totally reminded me of what we have in the broadband space around broadband labels, where now you have to have these nutrition labels that talk through all of this, legal and regulatory crap that nobody probably cares about. But I'd love to hear just your perspective on, working with other industries. What are you encouraging people to do to get out of that fact-based selling approach that doesn't really resonate with somebody, to your point, and how they're actually using the service.
Yeah, and it was fun actually sending those samples over of the banks, and just so people can visualize. You've been to a banking site, and you've probably been greeted with no less than 4 different checking options. What checking account do you want? Checking now, checking free, checking and they don't even give you all the metric. They don't even give you what you need in that view. They just give you some flowery text of the checking account instead of the meat and potatoes. Do I need to carry a minimum balance? Will I earn interest on this? you know eh, do I have overdraft protection? All the things that might matter in what checking account's going to fit me. But what I like to tell clients, because it's a commodity industry, so I like to tell those industries, whether it's engineering, agriculture, mining, telecom, or financial and insurance, is don't sell the commodity, sell the experience. Again, back to my earlier thing, we all know what auto insurance is. You don't have to describe auto insurance, but you got to sell the experience. So what are those key differentiators that you can sell to? And of course, right up at the top, the brand, the customer experience. You've got to align all the messaging around that customer relationship. That's where you need to start. Then it gets into some more things that you can do, like pre-bundling. So are you creating targeted packages to simplify decision making? And another episode, and because I actually have loved listening to all your
I
episodes,
feel like you've
even just
listened to
from a
like all
marketing
of our
standpoint.
episodes, Steve. I'm so
The whole
impressed.
show.
No, but I do. I really do enjoy them. And I can't remember who you had on, but they talked about how even in product bundling or product defining, coming up with new products, it really has to start with that financial model. Can you prove that it can make money? And then, and I kept viewing it as empowerment as you guys were talking. And then, the next step is, okay, we can make money if we make this. Well, then it's the marketing team. Will they buy it? And do we have an audience that's willing to buy it? And that's going to take a little more work. And then the big work comes in that no one really thinks about, which is the operationalization. Sorry, I didn't have enough coffee this afternoon to prove that you can
That's okay. It's a
deliver.
tricky one.
So I really do think pre-bundling is another way to differentiate who you are. And that is a collaborative effort straight through the company, not just marketing that's been tasked with, yeah, make commerce happen on that website you guys keep updating. It's a full company exercise. Reliability and trust, emphasize those relationships in that frictionless service, right? Which is pretty much like the brand and CX alignment. But then the other thing that I thought you could do, which is really similar to community banks, is the hyperlocal focus. You have the ability to leverage your community connection just the way community banks leverage their connection when you're looking at, do I want to go with big bank or do I want to go with community bank? And what are some of the benefits of going with a community bank? Well, the same things can apply here when BSPs are out there trying to market themselves. And at least you got to be in the same game. And if they're offering commerce, if you can offer commerce, well, that's one less thing that they can use to differentiate you. And now you can turn the tables on them and differentiate why, having someone hyper local and invested in the community might be a better purchase for them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and as we wrap up here, I think we just have to talk about AI here at the end of the podcast, because over the past few weeks, and Gabe and I typically joke that anything with AI changes day to day, but over the past few weeks we've seen companies like PayPal integrate directly into Chat GPT, allowing purchases through that specific tool. But Steve, looking ahead, looking into the future, how do you see AI becoming more impactful or even more embedded into this consumer facing experience?
Zack, I knew you were going to bring up the AI question. Having listened to all these other podcasts, I knew it was
We
coming.
can't help ourselves, Steve.
And and the funny thing is, you just said it. To try to look beyond 2 days can often be difficult. And quite frankly, I was telling a few folks at the office here, I should really just change my title to internet historian, because I've been doing it for so long and I feel so old at this. But I really do love AI, and I do want to talk about it. Um, I'm excited by it the same way I was excited when I got into what I am doing now. As you remember, it was the birth of the internet back in the 90s. It was the beginning of e-commerce, and it allowed anyone to hop on. It wasn't like, oh, I went to school, I studied this for 20 years, I know exactly what. This is new. Eh, Same opportunities here with AI. So anyone who feels like, well, I don't have a leg up on this, all you have to do is jump in now and start learning. And there are things that you can do. So having said that, when I look at AI, I'm going to look at two different areas, AI purchasing, and then I'll kind of break it down into some nerdier stuff. So at a higher level, the thing I like about AI and the fact that PayPal is integrating into something like ChatGPT, or maybe you've even heard the news, OpenAI is now working with Shopify. You're going to be able to buy something right off
Yeah.
OpenAI at ChatGPT with, from Shopify. What are they doing? Well, you've seen it. You've been living through it. You might just not have recognized it, but it's just another venue, another channel where commerce can occur. You're bringing the shopping experience to where the shoppers are, right? It's no longer get in the car, drive down to the retail store. It was dial up my website. It was no longer dial up, call up the website and purchase. It's now the matter that while I am on Google and I type in a product, now Google Shopping will show the product right there. They're bringing the product right into the search engine. Novel. Well, AI is doing that. Or, if you pull that thread a little further, it's not just Google. It's I'm flipping through my social media feed and I'm in TikTok or Instagram. I see something and I can purchase it right there too. They're making the point of sale, the purchase right there. And the thing I like about PayPal integrating into ChatGPT is that's another wonderful thing that's occurred in commerce is that checkout process. Like I said, you can have a payment gateway, but how you choose to charge someone, you can that has condensed incredibly. You don't have to ask people for their credit card. They just need to authenticate to PayPal. All that information is in there already. Whether it's Shop Pay is another one, Apple Pay, Google Wallet. These are all things that have shortened it on the other end too. So now I can show you the product where you are, and I can even check out without having to take you away from where you are. So it just makes sense to me that AI would be the next place where you'd see purchasing, right? So I don't think there's any great future storytelling to do there. But when I look at how it's amplifying and refining e-commerce, that's where it gets a little bit fun. Um, and what I mean by that is, a lot of people think AI is out to replace people. It's out to replace jobs. It's out to replace this. I don't feel that way. I think it's going to amplify and refine e-commerce, just like selling things on the internet didn't close all of retail. It still exists. May look a little different than what you remember it, but it's still there and will be there for the foreseeable future. Well, I don't think AI is going to disrupt anything into extinction. I think it's going to amplify. And when I look at those things, I look at, again, and I'm going to go back to the importance of structured data. I'm going to talk about that. Next level personalization. We'll talk a little bit about that. Visual and experiential search, how I think that's going to change. And just that generative and co-creation that you can actually apply to the products you sell, right? So if we go back to the importance of data structure, that plays right into that thing I said, not ready for commerce? Well, get your tiered offerings squared away. And we'll get a little nerdy right now, but semantic HTML, which I know you guys know, but others may not. Think of semantic HTML as just these clean headings, H1, H2, H3. It's no different than having an index in a book, and you can see main chapter, subchapter. It's an outline, if you will. You wouldn't believe, just by using semantic headings on your pages, whether you're describing your services or your offerings, how that makes it easier for search engines to understand you, but more importantly, and I think they call it GEO,
Hmm.
generative engine optimization. Yeah, I started off as a geoengineer. I can't get away from the word geo. It seems now they're
Yeah, there's
throwing it
some
back at me.
acronyms that are going to be hard to unlearn.
But again, to get cited in these search engines, you need clean semantic HTML. You need structured data. AI tools can accurately read that. What you can't continue to do is be lazy and put a sizing chart graphic up on your product. It needs to be structured HTML. And not just because it's good for AI, but be honest, it's good for accessibility. And 20% of users out there on the internet use some form of assistive technology to view your website. So how well are you doing with accessibility? And, it all starts to combine when you look at the importance of structured data and just amplifying that content. Because then the other thing you need to make sure is that the underlying data is as smart as it can be so that AI can actually lead people to a clearer answer. Because at the end of the day, AI is not too different than how I view search engine optimization. It's not just a bunch of keywords and analyzing those keywords. It's really Google wants to bring people to the best result. And I often tell my clients, then just be the best result. Same thing with AI. A little bit different. Instead of writing for the keyword, we're writing for the question, but be the best result. Think about the question people are asking. Write your content in such a way, structure it so that AI can read it, which is the same as a search engine, which is the same as a screen reader for someone who's blind. You are doing things that benefit, you know, one act of optimization just helped you across three areas. So structured data, I think, is important. Next level of personalization is one of the ones that everyone really kind of looks at when they think about AI. And, it's this hyper relevant display. And you see it now. You come on to um, Amazon, or you even open up Netflix, it has data on you, it knows you, and it starts showing you things based on what it is you would be most likely interested in. And is it a fancy algorithm that they're calling AI now, or is it truly AI? I don't know, but I think it's all eventually going to go the road
Well,
to
at the end of the
AI.
day, it
And
doesn't really matter, Steve, right? Because it's providing that personalized experience, and that's what we all want. Ultimately, what you're describing there is something that's beneficial to the customer. And regardless of whether it's fancy algorithm or technically AI, it's still providing that better experience for the customer.
I do see a place for AI. So here's where I'll get a little
For
futuristic
sure.
if I'm just thinking outside the box with this next level personalization, right? Um, you have Gemini and Chrome, and they're starting to roll it out, and they're going to make it a more immersive experience. Well, how great would it be if Chrome says, "Hey, you can put some personal information into Chrome. We won't share it unless you say we can share it. And we'll only share it with sites that say, hey, we're AI enabled to take some of this data." And what if that data was everything from a picture of me to my measurements to my shoe size? And I go on to a shopping site or a clothing site that has the ability to take this information. I'm willing to give some of that information over to it. Well, how great would it be if it could personalize a shopping experience because it knows what I'll fit into, or it even knows what event I'm thinking of attending. It can throw a photo of me right into the stuff. That's as good as, modeling it in front of a mirror at the retail store. So I do see how it is only going to get more
That's a
personalized
very cool
as we
use
go
case.
forward. So even if it is a funky algorithm right now that's cleverly disguised as AI, I think eventually at some point it's going to be AI. And it's no different than geolocation. You go to a site, it knows where you are, it shows you information around you. We've been
Hmm.
personalizing experiences online for years now, but the opportunity is just mind boggling of where this is going to head next. And then, as I said, the visual and experiential search is really transforming the way people look for products, right? You can do a visual search. You can upload an image, um, and it can find that product, or you can upload an image of your backpack, red backpack, and it will show you a wonderful red hat that's going to go along with it, or all these other accessories. So even
I
how
totally
people are
did that the other
finding,
day, Steve. I had some shoes that like they got kind of thrashed and I wanted a similar pair. I took a picture of them and I just uploaded that to ChatGPT and was like, go find me more shoes that look like this. Like it's such a better experience because then you're, to your point, you're shrinking all of these choices and making it easier for the customer to ultimately buy, which, really, I think is the common through line throughout this conversation today is, how can we get it? How can we make it easier for people to do business with us? Through e-commerce, through, AI, through that personalized, conversation. But, all of it comes down to, again, just how do we make it easier to do business with us?
yep. Yeah. And then the next step is going to be just that realistic preview, right? Which is funny because that goes back to shades of VRML that was around in the mid 90s. There's augmented reality. And now it's starting to come back full circle. Put me in the middle of this. And now it can do it. And do it effectively. And then, like that last thing I said, generative creativity and co-creation. I think that's, it's probably a bit beyond, or I can't think through anything, something like a BSP would see in this, but I definitely see it with my other retail clients where brands can offer all sorts of design variations through generative AI. So I can look at that product, but see multiple variations of it and then order it. And if it's, what we call cook to order or on demand purchasing, print to order, it could be a shirt, and you could even make it to the point in the future where it becomes bespoke. It becomes whatever design you come up with by prompting AI to then put into that product. So whatever patent goes over that product, or you get to hyper personalize the product right then and there with something that's unique to you, provided the delivery mechanism can do it. So again, I see AI in a nutshell is basically a powerful accelerator, but really at the end of the day, it demands better content, but you should be doing that anyways right now. It delivers more human centric experiences, which is something we should be striving for, even if we don't have commerce in place already or AI features. And it does unlock that infinite creative possibility for brands. What else can I do? So those are reasons why you should be looking at it. I'll use one last example, um, and it ties back to accessibility. People look at accessibility as almost, well, I have to make my site accessible. I have to make the building accessible. I have to put in a wheelchair ramp. And I look at it and I tell them, well, let's look at that wheelchair access into the building. We talked earlier about how doing one thing can be good in multiple areas. Well, there's a prime example, because that's not just for someone who's maybe in a wheelchair and needs that ramp. It's for the delivery man who comes in the afternoon and can ride his dolly up it. It's the family that comes with a stroller and they can take their infant up it. There are reasons to be doing this stuff that are going to serve more than just one specialized focus. And that's what I want people to understand when they're thinking about wading into e-commerce. It's not the act of getting into e-commerce and being able to fulfill those orders. Yes, that is the goal, but you are going to do things along the way in pursuit of that goal that is just going to elevate you in a whole host of other areas. So it's not just one payoff. There's plenty to be had by focusing on content.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Well, Stephen, I think that's all the time we had here today, but thank you again for joining us. I think this was a fantastic conversation, and I feel like we need a whole separate episode now. Gabe and I did one a while back on what does the internet know about me. There's been new privacy policies from Facebook about how they will use some of the data in AI. So we might have to follow up on some of that.
Yeah, I deal with, and it's not just the privacy laws in the EU. You've got the California Privacy Act that's also an issue. And it's funny, I've had two banks ask me, do we need cookie policy data and that ability to allow people to programmatically choose what they want to divulge and not divulge, which I thought
Yeah.
was interesting, because banks have never thought that way before. Oh, we're just doing business here. We're not in Europe. We don't have to worry about, cookies and privacy protection, but it is quickly becoming everyone's problem. And I think with this kind of
Yeah,
stuff, yeah, there's going to have to be a look at it. How do I share it? Where
for
do I
sure.
share it? What benefit do I get in sharing it? Right? I mean, it's my data. If I'm going to share it, it's for my benefit.
Well, there's got to be some sort of give and take there, right? Where if I am sharing it, then I need some sort of personalized experience. Otherwise, what is the benefit of me sharing this information?
And Gabe, we can mic drop on that. But thank you everyone for tuning into Buffering. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to follow us on your favorite podcast app and to share it with your friends and colleagues. And for more insights and updates, be sure to connect with Steve and Gabe and I on